is thinking about it. There we go. We are live. Hello, everybody. Welcome back to another edition of the Self-Published Fantasy Blog Off, or SPFBO, which is easier to say, live panel chats. I am back with another multi-blog special tonight with Mike and Ben. Mike and Ben, welcome. So glad to have you on.
Thanks for having us.
Hey,
Indeed.
Kay. So good to see you on. Yeah, I see a lot of people are on. If you're on and you're participating in SPFBO, let us know who you are, what book you have, what blog you're in, and we'll pull you up on the screen. It's all about bringing people together in the community doing these things. But yeah, so this is a multi-blog. And for those who are like, what does that mean? The SPFBO competition takes 300 books that were entered in first come, first serve order and organized by Mark Lawrence, who does this for free. Thank you, Mark. And then split among 10 blogs. So 30 books a blog. And those blogs go through these books and decide which ones to put forward in the competition. And then obviously there will be a winner by the end. Hey, AF Stewart. So when we say our blogs, we mean the blogs who are reading, reviewing, and judging our books. I'm in Fantasy Book Critics blog with The Vow That Twisted Fate. It's an epic fantasy. Ben, what are you in with, and which blog are you in this year?
Let's see. I'm in with the Weather Wax Report with my book, Many Savage Moons, which is an urban fantasy.
Love the cover, by the way.
Thank you. It's by Doyle Hinkle. He's a great cover artist.
Nice. And Mike, I know what you're in with, but I don't remember what blog you're in.
Becoming a Druid is my book. I'm in Fantasy Faction, and there are a lot of very good authors in that group with me.
I mean, you deserve to be in there. I was sort of intimidated. I was picking up whose books were in SPFBO this year, and I was like, I've read this person's book and that person's book and that person's book. And when I saw your book, I was like, oh, that was another one of my 5-star reads last year. So just going, oh, wow. Nothing like competing against the best, really. Yeah. So how are you guys feeling so far? It's been almost 2 weeks since we entered. 12 days.
Yeah, it's been a bit of a whirlwind. I know we were saying that just a second before we got on camera, but throwing your book in and then seeing the social media industry behind the contest, it's been an eye-opening experience. But really need to see the community behind it too, and watch the authors talk about it. It's been very exciting.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's been exciting. I have no expectations for my book. I just don't want to go out in June. That's all I ask. I mean, July is fine. I just don't want to go first. Otherwise, yeah, my TBR has grown exponentially, which I did not need. At least they're all on Kindle because I don't read physical books anymore. So I'm not going to strain my back. But yeah, there's a lot of books I got to get to.
Had you guys read any of the other books that are in yet, or have you taken time to look at all the other books that are in? I know there's a lot of them.
It's so funny that you say that. I've looked through a few of the books and I've started to put my TBR together, and Mike's book is actually one of the ones that I read the first few pages, and really impressed with his wordsmanship. It was a very impressive intro. So I'm looking forward to reading a lot more of the books as we get deeper into the contest.
Yeah, I know that feeling. No one wants to go out first.
So I've been on Mark Lawrence's site. I've been on Zach Argyle's site, and I was like, okay, I got a kind of good feel for the book. And then I look on Twitter, and they're like, SPFBO9 author. I'm like, nope, don't remember that book at all. That's another Western. Oh, I got to read that. So I don't know. I'm overwhelmed.
Yeah. When Mike says Zach Argyle is a past participant in a different SPFBO who has, out of the kindness of his own heart, put together an interactive list of all the books, which I've got listed right here on the screen for you if you're watching on Twitter, because I know you can't click the link, or you can click the link in the description box if you're watching on YouTube. But you could sort that by audiobook, you could sort it by Kindle Unlimited, and just get a feel for all the different books that are in this year. Now, the first thing I went through, I was like, oh, how many? And I think the final total came down to about 80 that I had read.
Oh, wow.
before because I've been telling people I just have obviously an indie fantasy addiction is what this is. And so I'd like to read the other 220 that I haven't done, but it's probably going to take me a year to do. uh, but yeah, so for those who haven't met you before, why don't you tell us just a little bit about yourself, how you got into writing, and why you picked the book that you did to put into SPFBO this year?
Mike, I'll defer to you first this time. Go right ahead.
Okay. I started writing in 2017. I had never really wanted to be an author. And then I read a book and I said, you know what? I could do that. And I'm like, put your money where your mouth is. So I started. I wrote a really bad sci-fi book that's still sitting on my hard drive and probably will never leave. And then after rewriting it for the 8th time, I was like, I'm going to take a break. I'm going to write a fantasy book just to, clear my head. Then I'll go back. And I've never gone back. I've now written 3 books. They're here behind me. There we go. And there's going to be 7 books total in the series. So, yeah.
Very exciting.
So I've been writing for 20 years, probably 6 out of 7 days a week for about 20 years.
Wow.
Yeah, I've pursued traditional publishing for a long time, had representation for a while, but never broke through. And then, I'm starting to cash in all my chips on self-publishing, and I've self-published a little bit in the past. I put out 3 novellas, epic fantasy, but Many Savage Moons was an urban fantasy that I've worked on in the background. I've kind of dipped in and out of that project over and over again, and then I wrapped it up, and here we are. I thought it was the time to jump into SPFBO, and I'm excited to be a part of it.
Well, awesome. So 20 years worth of writing is a lot of books.
Yes. Quite a few hidden in the drawers, a few that are out in the world. And yeah.
Yeah, I know a lot of authors have been watching these panels because some of them are commiserating and some of them are also thinking about doing this next year. But I couldn't help but notice when you said you had representation before, but you didn't break through. If there was an author who was wondering if they should query, if they should self-publish these days, is there one specific thing that you said you would think they would need to consider before making that kind of a decision? Because it really is such a different market to self-pub today than it was like 10 years ago or 20 years ago.
Oh, yes. I mean, it's unbelievable how much it has changed over the last 10 years. I feel like there were a lot of advantages to getting in 10 years ago for sure. But, I mean, I try not to get too outcome based with this stuff. I love writing. I'm going to try to make the most of it. And I feel a little bit like a newbie, especially jumping into SPFBO for the first time. It can be a little bit humbling. You have your communities and your people that know you're writing. And then all of a sudden you're in a new one and you're like, wow, there's a lot of impressive talent out there. So I just think, whatever you go, make your peace, whichever route you go, make your peace with it. And, I try not to, or just try to go with what's available at the time. And so I'm going self-publishing now.
Mm-hmm. Really inspiring. And then Mike, I know you had a day job. I have a day job. I don't know about Ben if you have a day job. How did you find time to write? Because both of you are saying that you write pretty regularly versus me, where I once a year during NaNoWriMo, I cease to exist while I write my stuff for the next year.
Well, yeah, I'm a chemist as my day job. And I tell people I spend 4 hours a night during the week and probably 8 hours on the weekends doing, it used to always be writing, which was wonderful, but now I've published. So now I have to do marketing, and I'm going to 19 Comic-Cons this year. So
Wow.
I'm doing all these other things and not writing nearly as much as I want, which gets me a little tense, but you gotta, if you don't, no one reads it, then what's the point? So
are you relieved or sort of sad that you didn't get into the critiquing chemist blog?
Well, I'll tell you that I have K.E. Andrews, her book from last year, Assassins of Grins and Secrets. I hope I got that right.
Mm-hmm.
And that's next on my list because I saw a blog when she was talking with Tori from Tori Talks, and they're talking about how not to do romances. Mm-hmm. I was like, yeah, I should probably read somebody who did this really well before I attempt it. So that is actually next on my list, and she's in my group, and I like I said, lots of talented people.
Yeah, and Tori's on. Hi, Tori. Oh, and Kay, I see your comment about TBR stacks. I feel like mine's a mountain now. There's no more stack. The stack is dead. How about you, Ben?
So I'm a middle school teacher, so I'm pretty exhausted by the end of the day. But and then at night, every night, try to get in a good solid hour, an hour and a half of writing, and then on the weekends, try to get in an hour to two. I write very slowly, just incredibly slowly. It takes me 2 to 3 years to finish a book. It's not for the lack of time that I'm putting in, but it's just my process, and that's been pretty ironed out now over 20 years. So, but I mean, I just as long as you're touching base with your project every day, I think that's the main thing, and sticking with it. And I'm always fascinated by writers and how writers' process is very, sometimes I'm blown away, like hearing, the amount of time that Mike is writing every day. I'm just like, wow, that's it's very impressive.
Yeah, yeah. And so do your students know about SPFBO, about your book?
Yes, I'm a social studies teacher, but the ELA teacher on my team, she touts my writing every year during one of her lessons, and the kids always have a lot of questions to ask. And there have actually been 2 or 3 years where I've led them through a lesson about my writing life, which has been pretty neat.
Oh,
Yeah.
yeah, that's really inspiring. Hopefully, spreading the word about all the indie goodness.
Oh, yeah, for sure.
Katie writes a wonderfully wholesome romance. Katie really does. And Katie's book this year in SPFBO is Hills of Heather and Bone, which is a new release. And the couple is already married in the book when you start out. And I've been, because hers is my TBR read right now, and I just feel like there's such a different dynamic seeing a healthy, happy couple in a book, what you were saying, like, than just starting with the tension and the angst, and instead it's like, here's how a romance would strengthen a plot in a story. It was really, really unique.
Oh, that's really cool.
Working hard on being more that way instead of sporadic. I feel you, Tori. I'm in your camp. So I'm an editor for a day job, mostly developmental editing, and so I'm looking for how to strengthen other people's books all day, every day. And honestly, at the end of a day in somebody else's book, I feel like I can't really work on my own book because I can't unplug from their world till I'm done with their book. So I usually have writing binges where it's like, okay, I'm going to take 2 weeks. I'm going to write my book. I'm going to take this week during the slow season. I'm going to write this book, or I'm going to work on this book. It's hard for me to be like, I'm going to write every day, because it's like, I'm just in books all the time. That's my life. I do it for work. I read for fun. I write for hobbies. A little bit of everything.
The dream.
Yeah, but really there are so many great indie books out there, and we've been talking a little bit about the themes and characters in these books through the other panels. And so we talked about main characters and villains and stakes and world, and today I wanted to ask you guys something I haven't asked any of the other panels, which is to talk about the politics in your story's world and how the politics and the government really affect your main character going into their story. You don't have to give us spoilers and tell us how the government looks at the end or anything, but is that government set up to help that character get started? Are they sort of a negative force on that character? What does that look like in your book?
Oh, I'll go.
Go ahead.
So my book is set roughly 300 BC England. So the Druids are the ones sort of in charge. There's lots of petty kingdoms that like to just fight each other, and the Druids are trying to herd the cats into not doing that. In the meantime, there have been 3 separate kingdoms have invaded the islands and have a foothold, and they're trying to expand. And the Druids are always, stop fighting each other. Let's try to get them off, and they're not having much success. And then my main character, Grami, is going on his quest to become a member of the Druids. And yes, there's issues, because the Druids tend to, I want to be by myself in the woods and do what I want to do. And when you add a government that tells you things you don't want to do, everybody kind of gets they're backbowed and things go wrong. So it's kind of, if they had a functioning government, it would be much easier, but they have a bunch of individuals trying to make decisions.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and the Druids in Mike's world, to give a little context, because I know sometimes you're really close, the Druids in Mike's world, they are not they don't all have the exact same magic or powers. They have different strengths. And so, at least in what I've read, without being spoilery, those strengths determine different positions sort of in their government. And it makes for sort of this seeking power, seeking ability, seeking skill, and seeking the government all at once there. Yeah. And we got Dan on. Hey, Dan. We got Madison on. And I don't know if other Ben is on. Who was on last night? Who's also a teacher. But I was just thinking,
Yeah, I was sneaking in and watching a little bit last night, and I heard him mention that, and I was like, oh, he's about ready to be happy like I am, out for the summer.
Yes. So Ben, first, congratulations on surviving another school year.
Thank you.
And shifting over, what about the government and the politics in your world?
So I'm working on an epic fantasy project right now that is rife with politics, but my book in SPFBO is practically politics free. The only politics in it are the interpersonal politics between the two protagonists and the one antagonist, who is a mad writer who is causing all sorts of problems for the main two characters. And they're trying to get a budding romance off the ground, but this writer who can write people into nightmares whenever he touches them is just destroying their romance as it starts off. So,
Wow.
there's a little bit of 2008 backgrounds. I think I make a reference to of a mural of the president to be in 2008 because that's where the book starts, but very little like actual governmental politics going on, which is kind of ironic because that's something that I'm fascinated with. And as a history teacher, I love governmental systems and politics and historical fiction.
Wow. So if you want to see more of the epic fantasy in the works for Ben, you're going to have to give Ben a follow. Actually,
Yeah.
Ben and Mike's links are both in the description box, as are the links to their SPFBO books. But they have other books too. So you can click those just to get started reading those. And in my world, I don't know. I like a good political fantasy, usually not in a romantic way, more in like the Game of Thrones way. But my SPFBO novel isn't as much into politics. There's one scene where there are a couple scenes where there's a big council of all the different races together, which made me, when I was writing it, sort of think back to like Fellowship of the Ring vibes with the big circle of people. But I don't go too deep into that. It's more of a character focused between the main character and her nemesis and what the world will become if the sorceress comes to where they live, instead of staying in her own evil dimension. So yeah, but my other series has a whole lot more politics. So if people pick up Lord's Gambit, there's a lot of betrayal and gods and goddesses fighting and mortals fighting for their stuff. And yeah.
Sounds intriguing.
I think it's interesting, though, that we both have a book in. It's like, well, we love this, but it's not going to be one of the big focuses of the book you're reading in SPFBO9.
Yeah, I know. I thought it was so funny because so much of my mental space has been taken up by epic fantasy and more of that sort of political fantasy the last few years. But this book that I was kind of writing on the side that kind of grew organically over 2 or 3 years, which is Many Savage Moons, that's the one that came to fruition now. And it's a different side of me, of my writing self, but yeah, just as proud of it.
Yeah. So this is my first year doing SPFBO. Mike, your first year doing
Yep.
SPFBO. And Ben, your first year doing SPFBO too.
Yes,
Even
indeed.
though you've been lurking like me for a little while. We were talking.
I'm sure I was like you guys. Were you guys like waiting on the computer?
Yes.
I was too.
Yeah, Andrew D. Meredith did a launch party that morning on his YouTube with some other people, including Tori, who's on, I think. And I was like, all right, fine, Andrew, I will be up. I'll be on. I had all my tabs open. But I was thinking I don't have to rush too much. There wasn't a big sense of panic because last year they said it took 9 hours to fill all 300 spots. So I was like, I've got everything ready, but I wasn't like sweating it to get it in. If I do this again next year, I will probably be like, oh my gosh, how many seconds do I have before this is full?
Yeah.
Oh, I knew it was going to go fast. I saw Mark a couple times. It'll take hours. I'm like, no, it won't. I had everything in a Word document, and I cut and paste, and I was one of the 121 that registered in the first 2 minutes or something. I was like, I'm getting in. I told my boss I will be late to work this day. I am getting in. It's at 8, and then I will drive into work afterwards. So,
Ben, students can skip the first period.
Yeah. I'm usually in school by 8, but I don't have to be there till 8:35. So that morning I was like, I'm getting there closer to 8:30 today. So I was done by about 8:05, 8:06 with putting in my entry.
All the kids are like, yay! Oh, goodness. So what happens next for you guys over the next 5 months while we wait for the first round of, bloggers to read through and decide who goes on? Are you going to be writing? I know, obviously, you both have much more scheduled writing time than me, but writing toward a specific project, editing. Mike, you're going to cons. What's coming on in the next 5 months?
well, for me, I have 2 cons the next 2 weekends, and that will be 12 of my 19. So the big push will be over. And I only have 1 in July and 2 in August, so I can actually breathe. I'm trying to get this 4th novella in the next book in the series. It's a collection of 4 novellas. 3 have finished. I finished 1 last night. Yay. Started the 4th one. I want to get that done. I have 2 sci-fi novellas that I'm writing. I might actually try to revive my old sci-fi novel from 2020 that I've forgotten about now for 3 years. I have a lot of things I need to write, and I'm just trying to organize. Okay, priority. What goes first?
Mm-hmm.
So.
Yeah, for me, summer is a great writing season. During the school year, I have the 1 writing session a day, and during the summer, I can expand that to 2 or 3 writing sessions. I'm in the middle of an epic fantasy project. I've knocked out the first book in what's supposed to be an epic fantasy trilogy, and I have 2 little novelettes that accompany it. So I want to add more to the second book, and trying to get a little bit of a backlog before I go to the self-publishing route with those, if that's the route that I end up going. As everyone knows, it's so much better to have a few in the queue. But just really excited, as always, to stick with my writing routine and just keep at it.
Yeah, I'm going to be editing like whatever editing whirlwind is in June in 2 days when the busy season picks up. And probably won't breathe again for a while, so I probably won't even have time to lurk much during that month. So hopefully everybody can keep up with all this stuff for when we do these panels, and I'll be like, what's the word?
Yeah, it's so difficult not, I try to pride myself at not being on social media too much. And, I try not to suffer from FOMO, the fear of missing out. But since joining this contest, sometimes I'll check in on Facebook on the SPFBO page, and I'll be like, oh my God. For example, what you were offering, I didn't see that until 2 or 3 days later. And I was like, oh man, this is a really cool opportunity. So you do kind of feel like you're missing out a little bit more if you're not on top of it. But hopefully I'll strike a good balance with that here in the coming month.
There's a lot of FOMO this year. And Tori, I didn't mean to miss your question asking, do either of you guys bring your experience in your day jobs into your books at all, or are the books more of an escape?
For me, I would say for the most part, they're more of an escape. Sometimes there are characters that maybe had a little teaching in their background. I know in Many Savage Moons, there's a big time gap. There's the beginning of the book, and then there's about 15 years after that. And in the latter part of the book, there's a reference that, one of the main characters spent a little time teaching. But otherwise, it doesn't play that huge of a role.
Mm-hmm.
And for me, I made the mistake of telling my friends, like, hey, no one's going to read this book, so do you want to be a character in it? And I started doing that. And then when one of the people's like, no, I would never do that, rewrite it. I was like, okay, new rules. You can be in the book, but you're only going to be in a chapter or 2 and you're going to die. And that way we don't have any, no, I wouldn't do this, I wouldn't do that. And the one guy who kept hounding me, he didn't die, but he had a fate nearly as bad, if not worse. I was like, so There's several people now at work who was like, I want to be in, and most of them want to be bad guys. So I'm like, okay,
you started the thing, Mike.
Oh, that's really cool. That's a smart way to get a built-in readership as well. That's
so I'll have to find a fun way to kill you, but that's fine.
Wow. And I was like, and for everybody else, this is why the entirely coincidental clause exists at the beginning of the book. Oh, that's awesome. Yeah. So none of our students or anything.
No.
I've actually had some people be like, did you write this book about me? I was like, no, actually, I didn't even think about them being like you. Or like one person, I hadn't even met them. Most of the books that are coming out now are books that I wrote in my teen years and that I'm just revising to release now while I write new stuff. And I was like, I didn't even know you. This character was around.
I don't know what it's like for most writers. I know that for me, any character, I mean, of course, sometimes we draw inspiration from people in our lives, but any like specific character is such an amalgam. Like even if it had like a touch of somebody in it, it's intertwined and combined with about 10 or 15 other people, and then maybe some historical figure, and I don't, maybe for other writers it's different, but I know that's the way it is for me.
Mm-hmm.
My oldest brother, he told me, do not write me, do not put me in the books. And I was like, well, you're the basis of Caradoc. So I guess I just won't tell you. And then he read the book and he's like, you know what? You need to do more Caradoc. I really like that character. I'm like, of course you do. So
we really like Caradoc too, just saying. But oh, yes. Well, but thank you both so much for taking time on a Monday night to hop on and do this panel and chat with me and chat about your books. I wish you all the best of luck, and everybody watching who's participating. Best of luck to all of us surviving the next 5 months while we wait and cheer our fingers off.
Yeah. Thank you,
Katherine,
for doing
best
this.
of luck to the both of you and everyone else out there.
Yes.
Ben, I hope I see your book in the finals.
Same to you, Mike. Same to you.
Yes.
And Katie, you too.
Yes, may the odds be ever in our favors, right? Yes. All right, everybody. If you're watching and you want to meet more authors from SPFBO, I have an entire playlist that I added to my channel today of the panels that I've had leading up to this point of SPFBO9 authors. And there will be more panels coming, about 9 more over the next week and a half or so. So subscribe to catch all of those. Thank you, everybody.